right, I'm excited to have Maria Brito with us today because we just spent 5 minutes talking about a little bit of background about where you came from, where you're going to, what the whole concept is, and being an author of a book, and I know how much work that is. Tell us a little bit about your background, Maria. Tell us about what got you into this world, because I think this is going to be one of my more fun interviews of the month.
Hi, Joe. Thank you for having me, and thank you for everybody who's listening. Yes, I was born and raised in Venezuela, and I moved to the United States to go to Harvard Law School. And I basically escaped a country that went into a very dark path of communism and terrible governments that basically ended with the economy and everything that existed. And so the reason why I went to law school is because my parents had this idea that I had to follow a very dependable path, and I had to find some sort of career that would guarantee that I was going to be financially sound for the rest of my life, even though there's no such thing, right? I mean, there's no guarantee of anything.
Oh, I want to get into that. We got to get deeper into that later, but
yeah,
keep going.
There, but that was really not what I wanted to do. My heart was into the arts, and I wanted to be a performer and a singer. And people would say, well, me too, as a child and whatnot. But I did have a talent, and I had a lot of auditions, and I always got into whatever I wanted and whatnot. But to my parents, that was not something that a normal person would do. Like, that was for crazy people or for people with no other, ways to support themselves and whatnot, right? But anyway, it was like a lot of brainwashing, to be honest with you. And so I ended up settling. It's not even that I settled for the best law school, right, in the world, but it's like I settled for something that I didn't want to do, but I convinced myself that was the way to do it. And I'm grateful for the opportunity of having had such an incredible education. And then I moved, thanks to that, I was able to leave the country. And then I moved to New York, and I have been in New York since 2000. And my first 9 years in New York City, I worked in companies, and I worked in big law firms and medium-sized law firms, and I hated it with all my might. And so I realized one day, after having given birth to my first child, that I couldn't really waste my life like that, and that I was not happy, and that I was not made for a corporate office, and being an attorney was not my mission, and it was not fulfilling. And I have nothing against attorneys. If lawyers are listening, you guys are very needed in society. Actually, it's a very, very noble profession, but it was not for me. And so I decided, after a lot of soul searching, that I wanted to open my own business, and that it was going to be an art advisory company. So what do? Is that I buy art for my clients, and I build art collections that gain value over time. And I branched out in a lot of different ways. I have worked with artists in product collaborations, and we have sold them around the world. I have been hired to curate exhibitions. I have consulted for companies on the topics of creativity and innovation, and translating the minds of artists for executives in big companies, and explaining to them what to do to create more innovation and newer offerings and products and services and whatnot. So I have branched out and created a business that I took from 0 to 7 figures with a minimal overhead. And I'm incredibly proud of that. And I think, and I can attest, that coming from the barrenness of being an attorney to where I am today, I owe that to how I build my creativity and how I dig into all the things that I needed within me to create something that was not available in the market the way I was presenting it. And so that is my current objective, is to bring this message to more people so that they can do themselves the same thing I did. And every time I need to adjust and pivot, I already know that I have all those tools within me. And so it's a very important thing in the times that we're living, that people can trust and rely on their creative abilities. And as I was telling you before, it is not about being an artist, and it's not about cutouts, and it's not about wizardry. We are born extraordinarily creative, and as we get older and we get in positions and formal education, and we get media telling us and things like that, we start getting disconnected from our center of creativity. And so I want everybody to reclaim that for themselves.
I love that. I love that. You actually used the word there I was going to shift into, which is the word pivot, right? Like, I know it takes massive guts to do what you did, especially being as deep in, I mean, you're at Harvard Law School. It's not like you went to a couple semesters of community college and made a shift and decided you wanted to do something different, right? Like, walk me through, or walk our audience through, like, what went through, if you can remember, your mind at that time, right? What, when you were really feeling, not connected to that, or not, passionate or driven about that, and then you decided to make that shift. I mean, that had to be a really tough thing to do, but it also had to be kind of like an identity shift, right? For you to go out and like live that new perspective, live that new identity, and were there people holding you back, that type of thing? Like, what was that shift like? What did it feel like, and how did you pull through it?
That is an excellent question. And the truth is that, as I told you, my true identity is the one that I have right now, but I had wanted to please my parents, and in a way I had believed the entire story. And so remember also is context and culture, right? My parents are Venezuelan. It's, Catholic Christian is very rigid. It's one thing or, nothing, right? And so for them, there was no option, because also the context, they couldn't have anything else to prove that I could do anything, right? Anything different than being a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer or things like that, right? And so I had several different jobs in the span of those 9 years, right? And so I was always thinking the next one is going to be better, right? I'm going to finally kind of like find myself in the right environment with the right people. And so I worked I did corporate America as a liaison between the legal department and business development. And that was really a lot of fun. And I learned a lot, but the company went busted because it was like the .com bubble. So then I was like in an international law firm that put me to work with different offices around the world. And that was really fun. But I was like, okay, what's next? Then I was in a medium-sized law firm. Then I ended up in a really super prestigious Wall Street law firm. I was the only foreigner. Literally, I was like, I think there were 2 Latinos in the whole thing, and they treated me with great respect, but it was horrific. I mean, it's 16 hours a day that you're working, and you have to, at the time there were no iPhones, so you had a BlackBerry, and then you have to sleep with a thing under your pillow. And I had no desire to go there, and I just felt that I had already gotten everything that I could have gotten out of being an attorney, right? And so I had been discussing with my husband. Again, I was pregnant. It was my first child. And I was like, I need to open my own business. I'm very entrepreneurial. I see things that other people miss. I am consistently recommending this artist to my friends, and they are getting, returns that are incredible. I have an eye for this. I can make people happy in a different way. And so that was months and months, right? I mean, it's not that I woke up one day and say bye, right? It's just this was bubbling inside of me. And the truth is I was miserable, man. If you could have told me, listen, you're going to get like maybe a job at a fashion firm or whatever, and you're going to start at the lowest level, I potentially could have taken it, because I was so done with everything, right? And so, of course, this takes enormous trade-offs, right? I was making a lot of money, as I'm telling you, is one of the most prestigious and important Wall Street law firms. And I had a 401k, and I had an insurance, and every night a car would drive me home, because you had that perk after 8 p.m. And so every day you would leave after 8 p.m. because that's the level of a lawyer. So so after my son was born, I was like, I just cannot have a child and, first of all, not see him again, right? And second, what am I going to teach him? What is he going to know about me when, he's like 10 or he is 20? He's like, oh, well, my mother was a miserable attorney whom I never saw. The end. He's like, is that what I want my obituary to read? No, right? And so yeah, the pain of staying in that job was a whole lot heavier and darker than any of the alternatives. So I just went with the alternative, which was the thing that I wanted to bet on myself and utilize whatever I had inside of me and transfer the skills, right? Because that's the other thing is that, all right, well, I had to learn a whole industry that I didn't know. And I had to also learn to be the CEO, and I had to learn how to work with people in a different way. And I had to learn a lot of things about marketing and social media. And we're talking about 13 years ago when things were very rudimentary, if you will. Like we only had Facebook, we only had Twitter, and people would use Blogger or something like that as a platform, right? And so this is 13 years ago, and I was lucky, but at the same time, when everything sort of falls into place, you know that you took the right decision. And for me, it took about a year for everything to fall into place. And I think that when I started getting those signals from the universe and confirmation that things were really moving for me, I knew I was doing the right thing.
Well, I mean, there's a couple things I want to, because a lot of times entrepreneurs talk and they don't realize the golden nuggets they're dropping while they're saying it. So I want to recap on a couple takeaways that I just got from that, right? Number one is you kept pivoting, right? You tried different things out. I think a lot of, especially young business owners right now they get stuck in a thing, right? They think that this is all I can do and this is what I do and I keep doing it. But you kept trying things out. Like you kept taste testing things, trying to decide what was the right thing. But ultimately what you did was you aligned with your unique ability. You align with what your true passion is. And I think that is one of the most important takeaways for a lot of listeners, because a lot of people are chasing the money. They're chasing the drama. They're chasing trying to impress other people. And the reality of it is, once you capture that passion, that unique ability, like what you're really great at, and you figure that out, it's empowering, right? And I think it helps you make that shift.
Yes. And I'm going to just say that in my upcoming book, there is a whole chapter on pivoting. And I just for our listeners, the name of the book is How Creativity Rules the World. The subtitle is The Art and Business of Turning Your Ideas into Gold. And the chapter on pivoting was so important to me that I kept adding things to it, because it's actually a theme that trickles through the whole book too, right? And so as I've been 13 years running a very successful business, I still have to change things all the time. And the reason is because we change, circumstances change. We have never faced so many changes in the history of humanity as we are today. And it's political, it's societal, it is technological. So we have to confront all these changes daily. And because of that, we also have to make those changes, right? And so we have to adjust, and we have to be very present. And that's part of being creative, is being present. And that means paying attention. And that means trying to get a little time off your electronics every day. That means trying to build up on your intuition, trying to understand the symptoms and the responses that you get from the market, no matter the industry. Because if you're in any industry, you should know what's going on. You should be able to talk to your clients. You should be able to even talk to your competitors. You should be able to know what's in the margins. That is like, the riches are in the margins, and people just do not have that willingness to go and explore what is happening in the margins, because they have a focus on something that probably is already not even worth it. You can't really be chasing that only and only that thing, right? I mean, to have that kind of narrow-mindedness is just not conducive of having a business that is nimble and that is creative and that is constantly evolving. And that is the currency of how we run businesses right now, and it'll be for the rest of our lives. I hate to say it, but this is what it is, right? I mean, the level and the speed at which we are moving only demands for a constant adjustment. And that doesn't mean you have to be radical, right? I mean, it doesn't mean you have to do what I did, Although if you want to, please go ahead and do it, right? Like, I mean, if you're miserable in what you're doing, that means you haven't yet explored what it is that light you up and like what is your passion, right? And so I think that having the acknowledgement, at least to begin with, that you're going to have to pivot little or a lot, it already gives you some peace of mind about the possibility that you will have to change many times, right? And so at least start with acknowledging it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think what you're touching on, we've been talking about now. I mean, this has been 2-3 years of, I talk about adversity plants the seeds for opportunity, right? Like sometimes we have to have the adversity to force us to do the things that maybe we should have been doing all along, right? Pivoting, adjusting, correcting. This is what you're tapping into. What I think is the absolute superpower for visionaries is understanding what's outside and how you can make corrections, course corrections, changes to keep you in alignment. And ultimately to keep you ahead of your industry. And that's why I love your line that you said earlier, which I want to touch on, which is, shattering this myth that creativeness and creativity is not just for artists, right? Your background is art, but we talked before that I hit record about how every business owner, every visionary, everyone who wants to go make real impact needs to focus on that creativity piece, right? In order to create change. And so a lot of times this adversity that's stuck in front of us, it was planted there for a reason, right? Your dreams are happening for a reason. God's trying to tell you something, right? So what advice do you give to people who feel like they might be stuck? How do they tap into that creativity?
Look, this is something that I face with my students in my course, and I consult for companies too, and they have this sensation of being stuck and not moving forward, right? And so one of the things that I recommend people the most is two things. One is to spend really some time in silence, right? And that is because, as I said before, we are drowned with stimulation and information, and we're not allowing the answers to come from within. I think that people, we all have answers for the problems that we face, but we don't like to listen to them. And so developing your intuition is one of the most crucial parts of business. And people may think, well, you're woo right now. I'm not. Intuition has been a part of the repertoire of people ranging from Steve Jobs to Leonardo da Vinci. Okay, and so it's something that tells us what is our next move, and the more you develop your intuition, the easier it is to listen to those, that decision-making process. And when you do not listen to your intuition, a lot of people find themselves in trouble, right? And so if you can allow yourself 5 minutes a day to just be, because I mean, ideally you will build it up to 20 minutes a day, right? But let's just start with 5. And I also recommend people to jot their ideas with a pen and a paper, because there is a process that activates the reticular activation system in the brain, which actually helps people focus more and absorb more ideas. So that's on the practical level, right? And so when people are feeling stuck and they do not know what to do next, I also recommend taking inspired action. And what does that mean? It means, like, what is it that you feel that you need to do, right? I mean, let's say we're in the business of real estate and whatnot, and you are trying to differentiate yourself from your competitors, or you're trying to market yourself in a different way, or you're trying to get a deal done that it's not happening, or you just want to do something else, right? Differently. And so I feel that starting with your intuition, what is that your intuition is telling you that you want to do next and that you should do next, right? And taking little steps compound over time. And this is also something that I would like to emphasize a lot, is that you do one thing every day for the betterment or for furthering your objectives. One day you may not see results. Day 2, you may not see results. But at the end of 30 days, at the end of 60 days, at the end of 90 days, it's the same thing as like saving money, or it's the same thing as like trying to lose weight, right? You are not going to build $5 million in the bank account day 1 starting with 0, right? But if you believe in the power of compounded interest that in this country exists, then you're going to see that money growing, right? And so taking inspired action every day, a little bit of what you would want to do, whether that is like, reading a book, or taking a course, or watching something that is actually enlightening and not just garbage, right? And so I think that those actions help everyday people get smarter, better, faster, and at the end of that cumulative process, they can see differences in their lives. But a lot of people are not willing to take a lot of action, especially not a lot of action in their ideas, because they feel, nah, it's been done, or why am I going to waste my time doing this? And the truth is, you don't know, right? I mean, nothing happens if you don't act. So whether it is going to be immediately successful or not, we don't have the answer to those things. It's okay to try a few things and to take calculated risks. And I think that we right now are in a juncture, a place of actually you want to take those calculated risks, because there will be a whole different society once this pandemic is over or settled, in a place where we can live with the virus like the flu in a normal way, and people are not getting in the hospital, and we are not panicking and frantically running around, right? And so that is going to be a place of incredible opportunity. In real estate, for example, there is pent-up demand too. There has been a lot of wealth that has been created in tech. And so this money has to circulate. Things are going to happen. People will have different needs. There will be a whole other world of different needs that have been created. For example, online education is one of those new things, right? I mean, and how we live and how we protect ourselves, architecture is going to change. Things are going to change. And so this is the time to start putting those ideas down in paper and evaluating them and seeing how creative you can be to be the odds of a market that is saturated, because it's not one market. Every market has everything, and that's the truth. Creativity is about coming up with ideas of value that are relevant for that particular market, right? That are novel, that are interesting, and everything has been done. That's the truth. Is how do you improve? How do you build up in what has already been done that you are going to make different? Because Joe, you have a whole unique way of seeing the world, and your experiences and the way you grew up and the things that you read and the people you have worked with, the people you've coached, everything forms who you are. And no other human being out of the 7 billion who populate this world has the same exact blueprint and viewpoint that you do. But people think my ideas are not sufficiently original, or because they are not confident in their creative abilities. And I want to change that. And that's why I wrote this book. And that's why I illustrate that if I was able to do it, and my students are able to do it with remarkable results, then anybody can do it. And so I wanted this idea to be so widespread that I wrote a book that HarperCollins bought at auction, and it comes in March. And so I'm excited for that, but I am also excited for people to try it. It's highly actionable. There are exercises at the end of each chapter. There's a lot of history. There is a lot of neuroscience. I quote a lot of psychologists and researchers who have this, the way for them is to measure everything through data. And so if we already have so much that proves that anybody can be creative, and that anybody can come up with great ideas, and that anybody can execute them, and that you don't have to have a special God-given talent, and it's not about being artistic, but it's about being relevant and for the moment. And this is what we need.
I love it. I mean, there's so many good takeaways. It's like this entire episode has been packed, and I can't believe we've been talking for half an hour already. I mean, the couple things that going back to what you just said is, I feel like we have the same coaches too, by the way, because you said a lot of the same things that I coach on. But we talk all the time about taking intelligent and inspired action. right? And I think a lot of that has to do with taking the decisions that are in your head and bringing them down to your heart and your gut, right? Because, I say this all the time, you never regret a decision that goes wrong that you made with your heart or your gut. You defend that decision, right? But if we overanalyze and we think too much and too hard on something, and then we make a decision based on that, something goes wrong, then you go and second guess the analysis, right? Maybe I didn't, tweak the numbers. Maybe I didn't look at the due diligence properly. Maybe I didn't analyze something. And you always kind of regret the stuff that you made with your head. But when you make a heart or a gut decision, I think that's kind of, again, a superpower of these visionaries and a lot of the creativity you're talking about, because we know the answer, right? But a lot of times we're just second guessing ourselves, and the answer we already know. So so many powerful things there with the journaling, reticular brain focus, that whole thing. Just so many good things. But we have been here half an hour. How creativity rules the world. How do people get a hold of it? How do people reach you? Is it it sounds like it's pre-launch, right? It's not out till March.
Yes, it's not out until March, and so it's everywhere. It's every retailer and every Amazon and Books a Million and Barnes and Noble, and come to my website at mariabrito.com. That's BRIT as in Tom O.com/book.
Awesome.
I'm always giving bonuses, and I would love to hear from you guys. And I'm just very invested in changing the way people feel and understand the word creativity. And I really want to invite you guys to buy this book, pre-order it, use it, and have fun with it, and let your imagination dictate many of your next steps. And it's important also to use logic, like you said, but that is just to keep you grounded in reality. However, your intuition always knows best, and it knows first. And so it's the fine art of balancing both. And I think that a lot of very, very smart people who are listening to this understand that decision-making process requires that gut feeling first and heart.
Mm-hmm. And I think anybody listening can just tell from the pure passion of where you're coming from when you explain this. I mean, again, a lot of really good takeaways and golden nuggets today. I hope some people re-listen to this thing, but definitely, I'm excited. Go get the book, guys. Go to mariabrito.com. We'll have the everything links in the show notes. Anywhere you're listening to this, you'll be able to click directly. Go check it out. Go check out our website. Connect with Maria. And Maria, congratulations on the new book release. Excited to have you on today.
Thank you, Joe. It's a pleasure, and I am looking forward to coming back. Listen, I already invited myself for the future.
I love it. I think we'll do it again. Honestly, I mean, that was one of the quickest half hours of interview we've had in a long time. I think, again, great takeaways, and I'd love to do this again. So we'll try to get you on a future episode as well.
Thank you, and thank you everybody for listening.
Absolutely.